Shavua Tov, Ephraim Wenger.
Vua Tov, Jason Caplan. How are you?
Good. How's Miami?
How's Miami? It's very hot here. Um, the heat is something I always struggle with. Maybe because I have a Canadian blood. I don't know.
That's it. Yeah.
But
Vancouver.
it's an interesting time to be here in general. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely an interesting time to be here. Coronavirus, Israel locking down, and me feeling as if like I escaped a lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
National lockdown.
but on the other hand, there's a part of me that wants to be there with everyone else in the lockdown. So I think there's a mixed emotions, but overall, I think slowly settling in here, spending time with the family, that's been really really nice.
Great.
Yeah,
And we want to thank all of our viewers. We get about 100 or 120 views on these Sefer Yetzirah classes. So
yeah,
thank you everyone for
yeah.
watching.
I mean, if we could get comments and feedback as to any questions and things we
Yeah.
would like to
Everyone feel
focus
free
on,
to send in comments. Ask
feel
us
free to
what
do
is really
that.
going on with Malchut and Yetz in uh, Hod and Tiferet. That we won't be able to answer that. But if you ask us questions of what we talked about or send in links or questions, we love to see comments in the Facebook post. So thanks for
Yeah,
everyone for watching. It's really great.
for sure,
I'll
for
have to
sure.
remember how to talk for this class because I just slipped. Like, what word should I?
Let's So basically, Jason, let's do our usual. I'll hit the Hebrew, you hit the English,
That sounds great.
and then we'll just take it from there and see where we go.
I'll
So
hold up my English copy. Do you have your Hebrew copy of
we
my?
are here, yes, Hebrew copy right here, Sefer Yetzirah.
Ooh, gold. He's holding up
Unbelievable
gold
book.
there.
It's I can't. Yeah, we spoke about this last time. It's
Unbelievable.
unbelievable story. I feel very blessed to have this book. Um, and yeah, so we are in chapter 119,
One
right?
nine.
Aleph.
Yes.
Okay. 10 ספירות בלימה, אחת רוח אלוהים חיים, ברוך ומבורך שמו, של חי העולמים, קול ורוח ודיבור, והוא רוח הקודש. Short one.
Yeah, translation 10 Spirit of nothingness. One is the breath of the living God. Blessed and benedicted, I guess, is the name of the life of the worlds, the voice of breath and speech, and this is the holy breath.
Hmm. That's so interesting that he translated that into breath, because I was thinking when it says ruach, I was thinking spirit.
Yeah, he says that in the commentary. Is it breath? Is it ruach? Why is he using the word breath here? And he says we translate the words breath as also the word for wind, and Sefer Yetzirah apparently uses it as the term for air.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got maybe 3 or 4 different connotations. I don't know if you know this, but orach could mean a path, right?
Yeah.
Right? And then
Yeah.
oreach means a guest, right?
Yep.
So he puts all 3 of those together.
Yeah, I see the connection. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it says here, 10. It starts the usual 10 sfirot of nothingness, blima,
Mm-hmm.
which we spoke about in our first session. Achat. So the first one is ruach. So the first sfira, I think, what it's trying to say is sfirat keter. The first sfira is the one that comes before
First
chokhmah and bina.
yeah, at the top of the spherotic tree.
Right at the top of the sfirot, and um, as we spoke about keter, as like we generally associate keter with reason. It's the reason for um, what's the word for the Torah, for the outcome, and malchut is generally associated with the outcome, with the result,
Okay,
right?
yeah, so Keter would be more like the origin.
Right. It's like the origin is like that beginning point of reason, and in
Mm-hmm.
order to have a reason, you also need to have an outcome. But in order to have an outcome, which is malchut, you also need to have a reason.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we could also view like malchut, which is technically the outcome of the reason, but it's since they're both dependent, malchut can also be the reason for the reason, right? And
Yeah.
and the other way around as well. Like keter can be.
Well, sometimes the Kabbalah tree is that the malchut of one world is the Keter of the next world, right? It could be that chain. Sometimes they're
Right.
connected that way, right? But I
So
think
so
you're
that's
saying it more like they're related to each other. The highest point is related to the lowest point.
right. So that right, exactly. That's two. Where we spoke about the last session, where it says, tchilatam sofam nautz v'tchilatam. Their ending is dependent on, is connected to to their beginning, and the beginning is connected to the ending. And that concept, indicates that, they're connected in that sense, where beginning can also be the end, and the end can also be the beginning. But over here, it's I think it's now going through. It says Esel Sfirot B'lima Achat Ruach Elohim Chaim, and I think it's trying to describe, what is the essence of this first sphere, which is Keter, and it describes it as Ruach, as breath or spirit, and that's the word that it uses here.
Yes. So it gets into the part that I really like about. Already Caplan talks about Bezalel, who was the builder of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And in Shemot, it says, I will fill him with the breath of God, the Ruach Elohim, like we're talking about, with wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And so it says, the Gemara says that he was able to manipulate the letters. And I can't remember which Gemara it's in. I think it's in Kedushin. We'll have to look it up. But the word is saruf for combination. So I was learning this with a couple of people, the Nefesh HaSimsum, which is Nefesh HaChaim. This is a great Sefer, giving the translation. So I didn't know saruf. We were learning in Shar Bet Perek Daled, where Chaim of Volozhin, Reb Chaim of Volozhin, was talking about how brachot work, because you can't really bless God. You're saying, what is a blessing? But in there, he's talking about how the mitzvot and the blessings, saruf, or lit saref, they forge a connection. Hashem forges a connection with his creations. And it also means to purify, which I just thought was incredible.
That's really interesting, yeah. Generally, when I would think tziluf would be, like you said, a connection. To purify. So it's interesting that you're saying about he can't really be blessed. But it says here, it says here, just close the door. Thanks. Unexpected guests.
We're just using the word guest with orach.
Exactly. So basically, like it says here, like it basically saying that is in his essence. I don't know what's the translation to that in Ari Kaplan's in English. But my understanding here is that it's trying to describe that in one hand, he obviously cannot be blessed, but his very existence is a blessing. And on the other hand, mevorach is technically, when we are being blessed, Rabbi Ari Caplan here associates the word. Well, the word baruch comes from the word berech, bet resh chet, which is the translation for that would be knee.
Your knee.
It's just like the movement of the knee. When you fold it, it brings the body lower. The same way when God expresses his blessing, he brings it lower to us. And the same way it could also work the other way around, where when we cite the blessing, and it connects very much to what you were saying with Nefesh HaChaim, Nefesh HaTum, is when we also cite the blessing, we are also bringing godliness down to us, and also also the other way around. And that is very similar to the Kabbalistic concept, which is called Ol Yashar and Ol Chozer, which is, I don't know what's the translation to that, but I think it means forward light and returning light.
Yes.
And that is the concept where there's movement. There's basically movement between the different sefirot, and there's movement between everything and reality. But if you imagine yourself blowing up like a balloon, and you're blowing wind into it, and the wind hits the corners and it expands the balloon. So the running light, or using the example of the balloon, when I blow it in, I hit the corners and it returns back to me as well. It returns. And that's kind of, I think, the concept here of Baruch Mevorach, of blessed and being blessed, where it goes forward and returns back. Similar to the Ol Yashar Ol Chozer type of concept.
I think that's an excellent example. That's very good.
You could also take that, just by the way, just about the idea of ruach here, of spirit or breath. Like Rav Caplan here says that we'll get to that at the end point, is that what connects between kol and dibur, what connects between sound and speech, is the idea of ruach, of spirit or of breath. That's what connects between the two. And the idea of, if keter is associated with ruach, in other words, if the way it behaves, it's kind of like the movement of wind. So we can only grasp it when, because if it's compared to air, we can't feel or grasp air. But the only way we could feel it and kind of grasp it is when there's wind. There's a movement. In other words, there's a movement of air, and that's when we could actually feel it. So I think the same thing we could take here from kind of like, maybe our own spiritual journey or experiences, where in order to actually, kind of be on a spiritual journey or to grasp or to create some sort of spiritual experience, there has to be a movement. In other words, something that we could grasp.
Yeah, spiritual movement or personal development.
Right. Right. Spiritual movement and something like that.
Well, that's very good. I was going to say in the Nefesh Chaim, he does say that exact thing, that the bracha is the not changing of Hashem or changing of God's essence. I want to find a quote for you. He says in Sharbet Parakdal that as man's actions, whether good or bad, have no impact whatsoever on God's essence. God forbid. Right? But when we concentrate our hearts and our blessings and prayers to Hashem, then the kedusha is brought down. So just like you're saying, this run and return, the blowing in the balloon, and then sort of our reaching out to Hashem brings kedusha down into our world. So that is the blessing from Hashem, or blessing us. But it doesn't change Him. We don't bless God.
Right. I think to go along with the example of the balloon and to take it to more on a personal level, to ourselves, you could also imagine that each time there's the movement, when you blow in the air and there's kind of like this movement of back and forth, what it also does is expands, right? The balloon is expanding. So like the same, I think the same thing happens to us on a spiritual level. If we compare that to the soul, for example, or to the self, is where each time we do have these movements, we are expanding. Like we're always expanding, as long as we're really blowing in air, right? As long as we're really blowing in spirit. So
that's a great mashal. I think it. I think that's why Abulafia spent a lot of time on breath in his system, because I think that our physical makeup too. The two balloons we have, the lungs we have, really spiritually signify that same thing. Just the inhale, the exhales, that run return that we have with Hashem.
Exactly. So that's the interesting thing about the word in Hebrew to breathe. It means linshom. Like that comes from the word neshama. Neshama. Well, a breath also in Hebrew you could call it neshima.
Nishima. All right. Okay.
And you could use the same words, also using the same letters. It also spells out neshama, soul.
Wow, nice.
But there's a most definitely a deep connection between our breathing and our soul.
I think that the biggest thing I learned about in meditation was through, and we were talking about Taoism or Buddhism or any of those more Eastern systems, was to lock in on the breath, to then make that the anchor to do other, meditative things like awareness or, listen to music better. But the breath is such an important part of meditation itself. It's really interesting that I guess there might be another book. I think it's another Ari Kaplan book that has the charts of Abulafi's meditation on moving your head and breathing. And I always never really paid attention to it. I thought, I don't really know what that's about. I'm not going to start moving my head and breathing, but I do focus more on the breath now that I kind of understand a little bit more how breath plays a role. But this really emphasizes that core part that it plays.
Yeah, for sure. I think just on the lines of Abulafi, I think what, to my understanding, what he was trying to do with the movements of the head, and I think generally it would be movements with the head in specific movements of the way letters are written. So like the aleph would be like going from from the right corner to the left corner down to the right corner, and then up and down. There's movements
that could be doing the letter shapes.
Doing the letter shapes, and I think what he would try to do with that is he understood the significance of call it body mind type of experience, body mind connection. Like there's things that we still need to do on the body level in order to be able to achieve a higher level of consciousness or a higher level of a spiritual experience.
I think along those lines, that's why I have a preference. I mean, I think yoga is really interesting. I've tried it, but I have a preference for Tai Chi because you're always in motion. You're not holding a pose. I mean, everyone has their preference, but I like the idea of just continuously moving and using the
Yeah.
breath with that. I think that really makes a lot of sense to me, this whole thing of a dynamic movement.
Yeah. Tai Chi is interesting. Yeah. And that's Taoism. Again,
Yes.
back to
Yeah.
Taoism.
I don't know if they know if it came before or with Taoism. I don't know what the origins are, but with the teacher that I had in New York, who really said that your body really moves with the breath. I thought, oh, how can that be? You have to decide to move your hands. But once I really got into it, really actually just watching him, he could really just breathe and it would really activate his body. It was really quite
Hmm.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, really, really quite amazing.
Interesting.
Um, so you mentioned Ruach HaKodesh. I'm seeing that in the commentary from Reb Arya Kaplan. He was saying that Ruach HaKodesh is divine inspiration of information that one can bring back from the state of Chachma consciousness into one's normal state of Bina consciousness. So a lot what you're saying about taking from one level and the movement back to another level.
Yeah. So there's the words here kol v'ruach v'dibur, which means sound, breath or spirit, and
Mm-hmm.
speech. And like sound is something that's not is not really noticeable. It comes from a different level of consciousness, right? It's a lot of times
Oh, I see.
like
Yeah.
there's the sound aspect of things, and then there's the words that I'm actually saying that are coming out of my mouth. Like there's the sound of the words, and then there's the actual words that I'm saying. And he associates sound with the sphira of chokhmah
Mm-hmm.
because it's more of a earlier stage. It's a source to the speech,
Yes.
and then the concept of speech itself he associates with the sphira of bina, because if even if you think about it from like a masculine feminine perspective, like the sphira of bina, which is associated with the feminine side of things, it takes, right, like that's like the uniqueness of female, like taking the seed and then developing that internally and making that into reality, into
Mm-hmm.
existence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with the sound and speech. It's like the feminine side is being able to actually put it into words, and the more masculine side, or the side of the chokhmah, is developing the sound of things, the source of
Yeah.
it.
Or even that's very good. Even Bina itself means binyan, to build. So you would
Yeah,
that
exactly,
sound into language.
exactly,
I was reading
exactly.
Rabbi Nachman, who was saying that in his book, in his stories, that the lost princess was only awakened through melody. That he was saying how I actually have to go back and read the story. I don't really remember too much about this lost princess. I know it's a popular one of his stories, but that she can only really be awakened by true melody. And he was saying how important melody and song. And if you can't sing, try to sing a melody on Shabbat.
Yeah. So I wonder, since you're a musician, where can you take this? The idea of sound and speech. I know that you take it to the universal language room, but
Yeah.
what comes up for you as a musician in the matter of the music side of things? Like, because music, we could maybe associate that with sound, just with sound, right? Because it's not vocal language.
I think that's exactly it. I think that Chachma consciousness to me means all the notes. And you could just play all the notes that you ever trained to play, and you could just spill it out right in the beginning of a solo and just go. And sometimes in the rock and roll world, well, in the jazz world too, people kind of play everything they know right at the beginning of a solo. But if you take Chachma consciousness and edit it and think about building and selecting the notes, really ideally like let the notes select themselves, but think about building a solo. Everyone talks about building a solo. That binyan would be the idea of editing everything in your mind, which is just the world of sound,
Mm.
and picking out those key notes that really express that moment or express yourself, and then let it build binyan, get it to the crescendo, the top of the solo, and then take it back out and take people on a journey. So that jazz wise, I think that's what it is. And then I think
So
just
do you think we could associate like the notes as themselves, as their own like entities, associate them with the idea of call, of sound, and then when we put them together we build harmony, which creates the dibur, like the actual expressing the sound of things.
right, right, very good, very very good. You can get the
um,
harmony if you build it. Even you can even build non-harmony and have a certain sound and feeling to that,
that's
which is
it,
the
yeah.
atonal world. But I think letters are notes to me. Letters are notes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Okay, let's move on to our next one. Let's see if
Yes,
this is a
let's
short
talk
one,
about
but
this. This is a short one, so that's good. We've done almost half an hour, I think.
110.
Yeah.
um, 2 רוח מרוח חקק וחצב בה 22 אותיות יסוד, 3 אמות ו7 כפולות ו12 פשוטות ורוח אחת מהן.
Yes. So 2, breath from breath. With it, he engraved and carved 22 foundational letters, 3 mothers, 7 doubles, and 12 elementals. And 1 breath is from them. Remember how we always say in Sefer Yetzirah, they always say, yeah, we've named a lot of things, but there's only one God. There's only one breath.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
Don't forget.
Don't forget.
I don't think we'll forget. Like, it's been emphasizing this every single
yeah, it's the safety mechanism.
But yeah, so I think so. Shtaim, the second one, it says Ruach Meruach. I think what it's referring to is referring to Malchut. So even though Malchut is not really the second, you know, if it's on the chronological level, second in the sense of if Keter is the source or the reason, then Malchut has to be since the Malchut is the actual expressing the entire process, the Malchut has to be the outcome of things. So that's why I think it names it. I think it's referring to the second here, and that's why it's saying ruach meruach, like spirit from spirit.
Very good.
And then it goes into chakak.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, then it goes into like chakak v'chatzav, and the idea of chakak, I think we spoke about in the first Mishnah. It says right, 32 mitivot b'yot chochma chakak. Chakak mitvot, right? It uses the word chakak, which is how does he translate that, Caplan?
Engraved and carved.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about engraving is that you're digging something out in order to create space, and the digging something out, if you engrave, you know, your name in a stone, right? You're taking pieces out of the stone, but what it creates also creates your name. Like it creates, you know, whatever it is you're trying to write or to do, but it also engraves it within it, like it becomes a part of it. But then it also expresses something, which is like the name that you're writing or the word that you're describing. Like the process of chakak is a really interesting one, because like it's such
I like what you're saying, especially for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You know, if you take away your sin and averos and all your shortcomings, you know, there's a process of feel like you're digging out yourself, but then you leave your true name behind.
Right. It's just such a interesting like process. It's very different than writing on a piece of paper, because on a piece of paper you're just adding ink to something that is existing.
Yeah.
In order to express something. And that action is like you're taking something out, you know, let's say you're writing your name, engraving it on a stone, then you're taking pieces out of the stone, but by that action, you're expressing, you know, whatever it is you're trying to write.
Nice.
So yeah, it definitely connects to, you know, our time here, Yom Kippur coming tomorrow. You know, the concept of, a lot of times there's the concept of, you know, Rabbi Nachman speaks about a lot about it, and also the concept of tashlich is connected to the idea of letting go of the past. It's kind of really along the lines of what you're saying, Jason. It's kind of like looking back into the past and letting go of specific things that, you know, are perhaps preventing us and stopping us from being present at this moment. And it's, yeah, I think that's a lot of the work that we need to be doing up until this day of Yom Kippur.
I think Rabbi Nachman, his Bodhidus, is really perfect for every day, but especially during Yom Narayim. And you know, talking to God, but you know, it's really interesting to me. Like, you know, all these spiritual groups talk about letting go of the past, and then, you know, don't worry about the future and live in the now. And then I just think, yeah, I just talk to God about whatever I want to talk about. I'm not going to limit myself. I mean, if I want to talk about the past, talk about the past. You know, it's the thing about his Bodhidus, and I like this thing about engraving is do whatever you want. You know, just you are who you are, and you know, there's things you still need to dig out about yourself. Go dig them out.
Yeah. Lost your sound for some reason.
Oh, let's see. On my side, it's okay. Here, let me hit pause.
I don't think it's on.
Okay, sound's working, no problem. So
yeah,
I like that piece.
Yeah, for sure. No, I get what you're saying. I'm connecting to what you're saying. Yeah, there's a lot to, and the rest of the piece here of Sefer Yetzirah goes into again the 22 letters, because the letters are a foundation of this movement of engraving. Like the idea of God, part of the process of creating the world is through engraving the letters and the reality and the existence. So it goes in and it breaks it down into again what we said, the 22 letters that are broken into three
three mothers.
The two subjects, you know, Shalosh Amot, which is 3 foundations, and Sheva Kfulot, which are the 7 doubles, and 12 Pshutot, are the 12 simples. Each one has their own unique
the picture
uh,
of it. I
tafkid.
know I had it. Does he have pictures in his commentary in Hebrew?
Not here, I don't. Not here.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if that one had it. I was trying to find the one where we showed those seven doubles and the 12 elementals. Oh well, I must have just gone over it, but I really love the
Right.
breakdown of the 22 letters. It's really
Yeah, it
fantastic.
might be in the beginning somewhere.
Oh, right, that's right, that's right. We said it was in the beginning. You're absolutely right. Here it is. Okay, so there's our
Yeah,
letters going through. Great.
right.
We'll have to have that just stayed on the Zoom. We'll have to make that a permanent picture so we can always refer to it.
Yeah. The interesting thing about those letters is like we have the three foundations, which are, like we said, Aleph, Mem, and Shin, and each one represents a different element. Um, like Shin represents fire, and Mem represents water, and Aleph represents breath or wind, Aviv.
Yeah.
And the Shin is the one that's connected between Chokhmah and Binah. That's the fire.
Okay.
And it's also interesting, just like we put on tefillin, and the tefillin that we put on our head right over here, it's a Shin.
Oh, very good.
Um,
Chachma being a consciousness up there.
right? So like
Yeah, very good.
you know, I think also like in acupuncture, there's a lot of like it's also based on a lot of energy points in our body that you're trying to connect between points in order to if it's heal specific things. But like also the action of the tefillin is very interesting that you put the sheen over here, which
Yeah.
connects between perhaps two hemispheres. The right brain and the left brain, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, or the two parts of yourself. And then the back of the tefillin is generally a dalit, right? And you put it here on the point that is on the top of your spinal cord.
Mm-hmm.
And the dalit in the sfirot is in the middle line that's connecting between keter on the top and malchut on the bottom.
Well,
So it's like
would it be dot also right there?
could be dot as well, right? It
Okay.
could be dot as well, but I just found it to be very interesting that it's exactly in the spinal cord, which is exactly our center, and the line going up and down of our body. And it also the same thing with the sfirot. I just thought that was really cool.
That's very cool.
Um,
Well, what's on your hand? On is it yud on the hand for the tefillin?
right, so on the hand is a yud, yeah.
So would that work with this sphera? I mean, I know it's 10.
Well, it spells out Shaddai, right, which
Right.
is God,
Right.
and so Yud specifically in the Sfirot is actually I don't remember
Let's look at
I
it.
don't remember which letter.
Yud because that's so interesting. It's on the side, like it's on one of your hands. It's on Yud is between Tiferet and Netzach. That's amazing. So like Shin Dal, like you're wearing it on your head and in your neck, and then off to the left side, like people put on their left hand. There's the Yud. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Okay, I never knew that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
So there's different. I see that there's different types of pirushim to it. The Gra and the Ari, they have different ways of forming the letters and connecting them.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Ari. I'm looking at the Ari.
Yeah. Well, So the one of the Gra here connects between Tiferet and Gvura. So that would make a lot of sense that we put it in our left hand, which represents Gvura, right? And then it points to the heart, which is Tiferet.
Yep. Yeah.
So the gra here makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So that's interesting right there.
That's great. Very good.
Okay. Very good.
Excellent session. Thank you, Ephraim.
Thank you, Jason. Very good. Okay. Well, I wish you a uplifting and very spiritual Yom Kippur tomorrow.
Thank you. You too.
And,
Meaningful fast. Tomorrow
meaningful
night.
fast.
You know the secret,
Yeah.
everybody? If you've stayed this long to listen to the whole shiur, do you know the trick to fasting?
What's the trick to fasting?
Grapes. I eat 20 or 30 grapes before the fast.
Interesting.
It has saved me. Some friend mentioned it, and I always just had a horrible time fasting. So dizzy
Really?
and yeah, but with the grapes, I guess they're slowly digesting. I don't know what the medical part is. Might even
Probably
be
the sugar. I don't know.
I think they're slowly. I think they digest slowly and they release water.
Yeah.
But it helps.
Thank God I do very well with fast. I mean, maybe because I'm a larger person and I have more room to
There's more
save
stuff to
food.
burn there. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, hopefully you and all of our viewers will have a meaningful and uplifting fast and Yom Kippur, and we'll be able to really, may this be another step in our own spiritual journey.
Yes.
at the individual level and the collective level as well.
Amazing.
All of Israel and the entire world.
Let's do some more
Everyone.
chachma to being a consciousness. Let's just get the flow going.
Yeah. It's interesting about Taoism is that they have a similar concept, the yin and the yang, and the yin represents fire, which the yin is, if you compare it like to Judaism, the yin would be like binah, and the yang would be chokhmah, and the yang represents water, and it's the exact opposite the way we view it here in Judaism is where chokhmah represents water and binah represents fire.
I think I actually saw that when I was reading this weekend, but it's interesting that we flip those, but still the framework's the same. I still can't get over how much the framework is the same.
Yeah, no, it is. There's a lot of similarities. A lot of similarities.
It's some unbelievable.
I was telling you about the I Ching, which is like one of the most, I think, is the most ancient, philosophical book of China, the most ancient Chinese philosophical book, and I Ching means it's the book of changes. Mm-hmm. I think that, we're learning Sefer, which is the book of formation.
Pretty close.
And there's a lot of similarities, and I told you the discovery where the I Ching is broken into 64 chapters, and Sefer is also broken into 64 chapters. So
it's incredible.
I'm curious to study more of that and to see where we find similarities or things that overlap.
Upcoming weeks, viewers, that's coming up.
Yep.
On the Chavrusa of Ephraim and Jason. Stay tuned. Either Saturday nights or Wednesday afternoons. We're trying to do either one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody wants to sponsor us, please call.
My bank account, not yours.
Wait, it's breaking up. He said mine. Shavua tov, my friend.
Shavua tov to everyone.